Hello, everyone. Greetings. So we have our second class here of this module. And as everyone's getting onto the call, I'd like to start off and do just a short meditation to kind of ground us and center us. And like I said, have everybody have some time to get plugged in here. So I'll invite you all to take a comfortable seated posture. And allow your spine to straighten, lifting through the top of the head and creating a sense of ease and freedom in each of your vertebrae, in your neck, in your back, lower back, and then finally the sacrum. And perhaps just adjusting your sit bones so you have a comfortable spots for sitting. And I'll invite you to begin drawing your attention to your breath. Just sense the quality of your breathing. Notice where it contacts the body, whether it's perhaps at the nose, the nostrils as it comes in, maybe the throat, in your lungs, your diaphragm, perhaps the belly, wherever it may be for you at this moment today. Just take some time to discover which area is speaking to you the most or attracting the breath to touch it. And as it becomes clear of where you perceive the breath with the most sensation, the most clarity for this moment, and slowly start bringing your attention to narrow in on that spot, however large it may be. Just watch the breath as it greets that area, as it passes with the in-breath and the out-breath. Allowing the mind to concentrate, be present with the sensations of the breathing. Then I'm going to invite you to bring your attention towards the scalp, the forehead, and just see what sort of feelings and sensations do we feel here? What's present now in that area? Without any need to label or analyze them, just feeling them, sensing them. And then slowly moving down to the eyes, the cheeks, just sensing what this area feels like. Continuing our scan down to the mouth and chin, perhaps all the way out to the ears. And continuing down to the neck, the back of the skull. See if there seems to be different types and qualities of sensations in this area than what you experienced above. Continuing to your shoulders, the scapula, the front of your chest. And then flowing down the upper arms to the elbows. Noticing the distinct sensations from the elbows to the wrists in your forearms. The palms, backs of the hands and fingers. What sensations live here? Perhaps more tingling, more aliveness here in the hands. Then continuing through our midsection of our torso, back and front, perhaps within. Moving towards the pelvis and the abdomen and lower back, exploring sensations here. In our thighs, slowly progressing down to the knees. Seeing if there's any unique experiences and sensations here. Are they similar, different, greater or lesser in quality, amplitude? Then from the knees down to the lower legs, to the ankles. And then reaching the tops, bottoms of the feet and the toes. And then just doing a general scan, maybe a quick one from the top of the head down through the neck and arms, torso, pelvis, and through the legs down through the feet. Maybe just a couple rounds and see what's most alive, what is speaking to you. Perhaps areas of tension, maybe areas of ease and flow. Infusing your body with presence and awareness. Then I'll invite you to bring your attention back towards the breathing. Perhaps with this newly awakened awareness of the body, see how the breath feels now. Do you feel it more fully as the inhales go throughout your torso? The exhales leave a vacuum there. Observing the breath for the next few breaths, few rounds. And then I'll invite you to slowly come in presence back to the space for teaching and opening your eyes. Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. So we have today's class. I'd like to go over some of the subjects and objectives that we're going to cover. The focus of the class is exploring the doshas in more detail and speaking about the functions and sites of the doshas in general, and then going into the subject of subdoshas. And so that's going to be the main focus of the class, is going over the subdoshas and understanding this concept, or Ayurvedic view. So before I go on, I just want to leave a short time for just some questions that you may have had from last class, as well as perhaps some from any of your homework assignments that you've had. So I'll open up the space for a moment to, if anybody has any questions about those subjects.
Hi, I had a question about the last part of the homework, the last question. It said to work on what was it? Describe the attribute, one of the attributes or two of the attributes from the dosha quiz, sort of in layman's terms for each dosha. But I didn't understand that, because on the dosha quiz, what attributes are they talking about? There's observations.
So with your dosha quiz, what each of those lists attributes or characteristics on the left-hand column, and then it gives a couple adjectives under Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So my intention with creating that is essentially, what you want to do is start developing adjectives that are a little more pleasing, a little more familiar to you, that make a little more sense for people. So when you develop your own dosha quizzes that are more dependent on the cultures and peoples that you're going to be around work with, perhaps you're going to be able to say it in a bit better words. Okay, kind of more personalize it. So we want to hear from you. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We want to hear everyone's kind of touches to that. And that way we can constantly maybe perfect these forms or make them a little bit better. Okay?
Oh.
Great.
Okay, because I thought the way you wrote it was quite clear. Anyway.
Oh, there's endless refinement to those. So I'm sure, and if you look, you're probably going to find a few that are, maybe you can say better. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, and it ensures that you look over the whole dosha quiz.
The dosha quiz, you were talking about posting one, and I just found one through Yoga Veda, but did you have another one that you have?
Yeah, that's fine. That's a Yoga Veda one. Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Anybody else? Or yeah, go ahead, Stephanie. Just got
yeah, sorry. I had a question about, so I think it was the second to the last question. It says, retake your own dosha quiz and assess two other people and your family members who take the dosha quiz. Help them choose the choices about the different aspects using the gunas. And then there's like a space to fill out. It just seems like it's a direction, not necessarily a question. So I was confused on what to put in next.
Sure. And that's very true. You may want to just give tech support a little feedback on that one, because they didn't need to put a little box in there for you. That was just
okay. Because I know, like I was talking to Julie about it yesterday, and I was
it's fine. The most important thing. Yeah, it's nothing you don't need to fill out. It's just an activity to do. One thing though about doing that is, when you are helping someone, or you retaking yourself, or you're helping someone, if they have questions, the way to do this exercise is to be with the person taking the quiz and be there for their questions, like if they're confused about certain stuff, because ultimately what you're going to want to do is help them understand it from a guna perspective, or a perspective of the gunas that are associated with each dosha. The reason why those adjectives are there to describe under each Vata, Pitta, Kapha section they're just our attempts at giving words to the gunas of those particular doshas when you think about that category. Okay, so any amount of practice you can get in clarifying, and again, that tags onto that assignment that the last person was speaking about. about creating your own language for that is going to be really helpful. Okay, it's a
Okay.
good way to learn how to do these properly. A lot of times we just kind of hand out the paper and then look at the results and don't think about it anymore. But we want to be thinking about this and helping people.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Just taking a look, just to confirm your quiz's guidelines for determining constitution. At this point, yes, it is. Excellent. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and get into our subject material. I'm going to begin with a little bit of a question. We're going to start with Vata, and I'd like to ask you, what are some of the main functions for Vata dosha? This could be popcorn style.
Movement.
Yeah, movement, right? So movement of what?
Everything.
Everything, like?
Like pitta, it moves elements to facilitate, coming together.
Well, think about if you're, and the light of this is, if you're going to talk to a layperson, a client coming in, and they're like, so what does Vata do in the body? Right? So they won't understand pitta. They won't probably understand the elements. But what are some movements that they'll understand?
Air.
Like digestion.
Yeah. So okay. So let's think about our physical bodies since they're coming in for that. So movement of the digestion, peristalsis.
Yeah, like
so Vata governs peristalsis.
Cardiac, like just movement of like blood flow and like maybe lymphatic movement.
Absolutely. It governs
in the body.
movement of circulation and lymphatics. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. What are some other things? How about some other people? What are some other functions of Vata?
Yeah, your kinesiology or your muscle movements.
Absolutely. Governs the neuromuscular system, governs the movements of muscles and the body components. Yeah. How about some besides movement?
Respiration.
Yeah, absolutely. It controls respiration. It's a very key function of it.
Elimination.
Yes, absolutely. Controls elimination. Perfectly. Good, 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 good. So let me go over a sutra. This is a classical sutra about the functions of Vata dosha. Now, beyond the sutra, there's a lot more, and I'll encourage you to definitely study that. In the sections I've given you for reading, it goes over pretty well. Last week's, as well as this week's, go over pretty well about all the different functions. So it's really good to have that memorized so you can answer questions about that, but for your clients too, so they can understand that. Because often concrete examples of it in the body is the best way to explain it, right? Or at least it's a good gateway to start understanding for people. So a sutra from Bhagavata, the Ashtanga Hridaya, one of the key three Brihadtraya or key texts of Ayurveda. Utsohachva nishvachesta vega pratatniyaha samyoga katya cha dhatunam akshanam patavenacha. So this is a sutra of the functions of Vata. So it starts with Utsaha. So Utsaha is the ability, power, enthusiasm. It governs that in our being. Achvasa, exhalation. Nisvasa, inspiration. Chesta, all activity. Vega, urges, expression of urges. Pravrattimniya, that is initiation, the initiation of urges, right? Or initiation of all things, of all movement. It kind of creates the impulse for things to change, to move. Samyog, so proper state and maintenance of the dhatus. Okay, so dhatu nam gatya cha, so attaining, maintaining the dhatus and the proper state and functioning of them. Maintenance also and proper functioning of all your senses is the key function of Vata. So it keeps all your senses, the five senses in the mind, all maintained and functioning properly. Right? Because all these things, our whole life is about movement. So there's no staticness in life. When static kind of quality comes in, that's not a good thing. Right? That creates blockages, that creates impediments to our life energy as well as physical systems, as we'll be learning further. So Vata is in charge of the smooth functioning, thus movement, of all activities of the body and urges and mental states. Right? So that's just the beginning. There's a lot of specifics to go there, but that's right from the sutras that we get there. So all sensory perception, creation, maintenance, and destruction of all our cells. Okay, all physiological and psychological movement. So another question now, what are the main sites of Vata? Where in the body is it that Vata hangs out in, let's say?
Head.
Okay, head.
The diaphragm and small intestine.
Absolutely. How about some more?
Colon, pelvic area, heart.
Okay, yeah, good. And I see a couple on the chats too, bones, lower intestine, brain function. How do we learn all the Sanskrit words? Practice, 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 practice. And over time, over this course, what I've observed also with students is by the time you get to one or two more modules down the road, even at the end of this, you're going to be quite fluent in a lot more Sanskrit than you expect. Okay, so I'll be using it, you'll be using it, and I'll be using an assignment. So just by seeing it and repetition. Okay? And you don't have to learn Sanskrit perfectly. Some key stuff is what's important. Okay, so let's take a little look. Let me do a little drawing to see all these sites because it's very, very important. We're going to be presenting the concept of subdoshas. And the subdoshas inhabit different sites than the classical sites of the doshas. It just adds to more places. And I want to make that clear right from the get-go. So let me go ahead and do a little drawing for you on the whiteboard here. Yes, they are tongue twisters to announce. I fully agree. Okay. Text. Let's do draw. Okay, so here we have Vata. Okay. And we know what is the main site of Vata? Especially main therapeutic site.
The head?
No, even though I put the circle up there, but it's not the head. The main seat of Vata.
The lungs and the diaphragm area?
Nope.
Oh.
No.
Colon.
Yes, the large intestine. So in Ayurveda, and I'll go ahead and put on Pitta and Kapha. Let me just move some stuff off my screen here. Okay, good. So Pitta, and then there's Kapha. Right? And I'll keep going back and forth to this one. So what's the main site of Pitta? It's near the main site of Vata.
Small intestine.
Small intestine, yes. And how about Kapha? Often it's the main two sites.
Stomach.
Stomach and lungs. Yes, stomach and lungs. Okay, so those are the main sites. Now, why did Ayurveda choose those as the main sites? Is because there's the concept of this is the main areas that they're generated, that the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha are generated and increase. And then also, these are the main therapeutic sites with eliminating them from the body. The large intestine through basti, or medicated enemas, small intestine through viration or purgation, and stomach and lungs through vomiting therapy, through vamana. Okay, through in Ayurvedic panchakarmas, these are the 3 key methods. Now, let's look at Vata. The key seats of Vata, we have the pelvic girdle. Okay, so I'll put pelvis. We have the thighs. Okay. We have the ears. We have the bones. We have the brain, but in particular in the brain, it's going to be more the sensory and motor impulses, okay, kind of the neurons. And we have the sense of touch, okay, so one of your senses is very much linked to about the sense of touch. Okay, get the of. So sense of touch, those are the key sites. Now, Vata has 5 subdoshas that also kind of congregate in certain areas, and I'll get to that in a minute. There's a bit of overlap, but these are the key sites of Vata and where it's found. Why is this information valuable? Is later on in the next module, we're going to discuss about how the doshas move through the body and where they get attracted to cause disease. So Vata, when it moves around the body, when it's disrupted, disturbed, imbalanced, it's going to try to find a place to lodge and cause disease. It's going to be attracted to these main sites of it, first and foremost. And hence, these sites often reflect tissues like the bones or areas that have a lot of space in them that will attract the Vata, like it will increase tract, like will attract like. So these are common areas that Vata will be found in areas that Vata type diseases stem from. Okay? Like in bones, osteoporosis, ears, tinnitus, ringing in the ears. Thighs, thighs go along with pelvis, so sacroiliac problems, problems with bones and joints around there, arthritis, osteoporosis again, large intestine, gas, constipation, so on. Brain, ADHD, dysfunctions in concentration and learning. Okay? Sense of touch, so prickly tendencies or inability to feel pain well, neuritis, any kind of nervous system issues. Okay, so this is just the beginning. So these are important to begin memorizing too, and just getting down so you have an idea of where Vata has a proclivity to go to when it's out of balance. Okay. A lot of the descriptions of Vata symptoms that are these giant lists that you get there, instead of memorizing these giant lists, if you can memorize these sites of Vata, the giant list suddenly makes sense because all the things on those lists are generally related to those areas. They're diseases or dysfunctions or signs and symptoms that are because of the qualities of Vata inhabiting those areas. Okay, it's the method behind the madness. Okay, so we've now discussed the key functions of Vata, and we've kind of discussed the main sites of Vata. So let's go ahead and let me keep going on with the other doshas while we're on the screen share. So Pitta. I'll come off the screen share for a moment. Okay, Pitta dosha. What are some functions of Pitta dosha?
Transformation and metabolism.
Okay, so transformation is kind of the key word for it, right? And then what was that you said? Mental?
Metabolism.
Oh, metabolism. Yeah, yeah. And so maintaining metabolism. Okay, that's one. How about some others? What are some other
Maintaining
key?
body temperature.
Yes, body temperature, right? Some put digestion of food, right?
Vision.
Vision, absolutely.
Your intelligence, understanding, and knowledge.
Absolutely. Yeah, it governs that.
Liver, gallbladder, and spleen.
what does it do for them? Those are just organs, they're not functions. Does it regulate the enzymatic functions of those organs? Yeah, absolutely. Does it help control the vata will initiate the flow of bile, for instance, but pitta will determine like the concentration of it. How about some other things? You've already listed a lot of good stuff. How about psychologically? What are some of its functions? Or more of it?
Courage.
Yeah, absolutely. Courage, valor.
Intelligence.
Intelligence, absolutely. Good. So let me just go and do a sutra for Bhagavad about pitta. So anugrachnat yakti pravat pitam paktyushma darshanik shut trud ruchi prabha meda di saurya tanu mardvaiha. So this sutra kind of states the function, the key function of pitta. So pitta in its normal state maintains digestion, body temperature, vision, production of hunger, thirst, and appetite, complexion, intelligence, courage, valor, and suppleness or softness of the body. Okay, those are some of the key functions of pitta dosha. And again, it's any heat generation that's necessary for any function of the body, temperature-wise, whether it's body temperature overall, or also heat generation, like heating the stomach to get prepared for food. Pitta is responsible for that. In the realm of digestion, assimilation and absorption of food. Transforming food, so that transformation quality, transforming food into cellular molecules and then later on into consciousness. And it transforms intelligence into, or transforms thoughts, feelings, and emotions into pure intelligence. Okay, so there's a lot of functions. Metabolism, vision, perception, so we all spoke about that. So it's good to know a couple of those key functions and be able to kind of like understand and explain to clients that, okay, when we're talking about pitta, this is what it's in charge of. This is some of the key things that we're looking at to see if your pitta is in a balanced state. Now, what are the main sites of pitta dosha? We've spoken, I'll bring the share up on again. There you go. So we've spoken about the small intestine. So what are some other places or key sites that pitta is associated with?
Liver and spleen.
Absolutely. So liver and spleen. Let me just erase some stuff off the bottom one so I have room. And let me get here. So I'll put those two together, liver and spleen. So liver is pretty obvious since it is a main transformative organ of the body. And the spleen is basically a blood purifier, but it helps filter and purify blood. How about some other things?
The belly button.
Yeah, they say it in Sanskrit nabi, okay? So, but I'll put a belly. Well, I don't know if I can write it that small, but belly button. Okay, navel. Right. Why? Because that is essentially kind of the face of the small intestine.
Gray matter of the brain, which I really tend to look at it as vata. I don't know why.
Aha. So gray matter is where the processing happens of information. The nerves going to it are where vata and prana are there, since they're the sensory and motor nerves. They bring the information to the gray matter to process. And then as we'll see, I'll give you a hint for kapha, the brain, but the white matter is where storage and memory occurs. Right? Someone also put eyes, blood, stomach. Yeah, so eyes, right? That's a key site. Blood, right? Your blood is a key part of pitta. And then we have the stomach. So the stomach is a therapeutic site for kapha, but the lower portion of the stomach, okay, is the seat of pitta also. That's where your hydrochloric acid and so on is there. Sweat, someone mentioned. Okay, sweat. And the skin, absolutely. Yeah, and skin and sebaceous glands, right? Right, someone's putting that as sebaceous glands. Great, sebaceous glands, basically your sweat glands and oil glands. And I remember reading that Vata's belly button up. No. It'd say belly button down. So let's go through these different sites of pitta. So liver, spleen, I mentioned. Gray matter, we talked about the brain. So eyes, again, because a control site. The fire site is related to the fire element. So that makes sense with pitta. Blood is also there to spread heat throughout our body. It's the main mechanism of heat spreading. Stomach, hydrochloric acid. Sweat is key with pitta because it's a way that our body maintains our homeostatic mechanism of body temperature. So pitta is very much related with that. Sebaceous glands is that oily quality of pitta. It lubricates on a surface level and also helps to maintain heat balance. Right. So those are the key sites that have a proclivity for, or pitta has a proclivity for. So often when people have issues in those areas, you're going to find that they're pitta issues. Okay, and again, when you look at symptoms, the signs and symptoms of pitta, dushti or pitta imbalances, you're going to see a lot of things that are diseases that are related to these sites being expressed there. Okay. Great. So then let's now go to kapha. Let me just erase that. Need some space for kapha in a moment. Oops. There we go. Excellent. Yeah, let me just finish this up here.
Sorry, what did you write just between skin and sweat?
Sebaceous. That's the best I could do spelling it out with this. Unfortunately, these pens don't work so good on the screen.
Okay.
So sebaceous glands or
Thank
secretions
Yeah.
related with sweat. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of come off the share for a moment. So now we have the main functions of kapha dosha. So what are some of the functions of kapha dosha?
To build tissue.
Yeah, help the building, really building anything in our body, that building the anabolic quality for sure.
Lubrication and nourishment.
Yes, lubrication, nourishment of the body, absolutely. Growth, I see someone put in there, absolutely. So anything anabolic, like building. How about psychologically?
Stability and groundedness.
Yeah, absolutely. Also like patience, forbearance. Sleep.
Memory retention.
Yep, memory retention. Yeah, absolutely. Good. I think we have a good amount here. Let me read the sutra from the Ashtanga Hridayam here. Shleshma stiratva snigdatva sandhi bandha kshamidbihi. So balanced kapha gives stability, lubrication, firmness of joints, patience, and forbearance. Okay, so those are like the key functions of kapha. Now, kapha, that can be greatly expanded because kapha is the dosha that is material, right? It's matter based. and it keeps everything together. Vata is movement, Pitta is transformation, and everything else, those two basically aren't really material. It's Kapha that gives substance and contains those. And I think, Sky, could you mind turning off your microphone, because there's a lot of interruption that's going on? Right, great. So those are the key functions of Kapha. Anything that allows growth, materialization, and stability, okay, embodiment, essentially. It gives a counterbalance to the two doshas of Vata and Pitta, which are active, whereas Kapha is a little bit more of the passive. So now, how about the main sites of Kapha? Let's talk about that. I'm going to switch over again to the whiteboard. Excellent. So, Kapha sites. Okay, we see tongue, right? Throat, tongue, yeah. Belly, hold on a sec. I have to move the little chat thing. Lungs, plasma, white matter, lymph. Yeah, good. Okay, we're getting them down there. So, okay. But plasma, okay. And you just put a couple more circles and I can fill them in. Brain again, like I mentioned, the white matter, okay. Lymphatics, right? Lymph, but that can go with
Joints.
plasma. Joints, absolutely. All right. And then we have fat tissue. Right? Sebaceous fat and fats throughout the body. The pancreas is involved here as far as an organ. Okay. Pancreas. And we have not only the white matter, but also cerebral spinal fluid in the nervous system, and the meninges that protect the cerebral spinal fluid. Anything, yeah, myelin sheath is a good one, of course. So you're starting to get off into more like finer examples in the body. So absolutely. Throat, right? That's a key site. Okay, so right there are the primary sites. We have lungs and the upper portion of the stomach, the pancreas, okay, which is the enzymatic functions for controlling blood sugar, for instance, and enzymes for dissolving not only fats, but proteins, etc. Tongue, okay, for taste, the ability to taste, which is related to the water element. Blood plasma and lymphatics, which are the more kapha-esque portion of our circulatory system and blood, let's say. The joints, okay, that require lubrication for movement, right? The throat for speech that requires lubrication, right? So these are all, again, if you're seeing issues in these areas, oftentimes kapha is involved, and kapha has a proclivity to cause issues in these areas. For instance, with plasma, you can see high cholesterol, high triglycerides is a kapha issue, lymphatic congestion. Joint issues of a kapha nature can be like if it's over lubricated, or edema or swelling in joints is a good example, I'd say. Lungs, of course, congestion, cough, that goes with throat. Fat, excess fat accumulation in the body, and that could go into hormones also. Okay, stomach would be kind of heaviness in the stomach, too much stomach lining or excess lubrication there can cause indigestion. Okay, good. So those are the key sites of kapha. So any questions there before I move on? I want to review that. I know you've probably seen some of that material before, maybe not as expanded as that. And I want to make sure that you know the importance of, again, knowing the functions, the key functions of each dosha, and then also the sites. That's going to give you a blueprint about things that can go wrong that are associated with each dosha. Kind of gives you the methodology of why signs and symptoms are put on lists about if you see this, this will likely be a kapha issue. Okay. Now, let's get into the main subject of subdoshas. So subdoshas, I'm going to first define them, and then we're going to go into the different subdoshas for each dosha. But let's first figure out, like, what are we talking about here? So subdoshas are essentially a concept that it was created basically to describe different locations and specializations of each of the dosha's primary functions. So if you think of the doshas and you understand the functions of the doshas, those functions often are associated with different organs and sites in the body, okay, or different systems of the body too. So the subdoshas are Ayurveda's way of kind of giving those functions a place. And that's useful because then now you have a site that you can work with therapeutically to help address dysfunctionality with those different functional aspects. Now, another way to look at the subdoshas too is they help understand the more specific functional relationships between the doshas and the elements. Because each of the 5 subdoshas for each of the doshas are basically the 5 elements, and how the 5 elements interplay with the dosha. So ether element and air element will have a different subdosha that will be represented within each of the doshas. Even though we know that the doshas are essentially 2 main elements, but they all have relationships with all 5, but they concentrate on 2. Okay, but the subdosha is given an expanded way of integrating doshic and elemental theory. And ultimately, the functions of the doshas localized to a site of therapeutic value is really the purpose. Okay, just as, like I said before, the first kind of definition is if you look at the key functions, the most primary things that the doshas do in our body, the subdoshas there give us a therapeutic site, a site that we can do various, whether it be like bodywork therapies, marma points often, herbs have affinity for those areas. We can use these different areas to modify the functioning or help with imbalances in more refined, fine-tuned functional capacities of the doshas. Instead of just like, I'm treating vata dosha, it's like I'm treating the sense of touch aspect of vata dosha by doing abhyanga with vata herbs on the skin. Okay, so it kind of gives us a more specific way of treating things. Or ears, vata is causing ringing ears. Well, ears can be a therapeutic site for oils with different herbs to help with that. Okay. Any questions about that? Just as far as a basic definition goes.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So when you had talked about the SI joint, you had mentioned that like the sacrum, the pelvis, the thigh area, that's vata. Then you had mentioned that the joint parts were kapha. So if you had somebody who had an SI issue, would you treat them as an imbalance of vata or as an imbalance of kapha?
Depends. It depends what kind of issue they have, right? What we don't want to do is fall into this type of Ayurveda. It's like, oh, if it's this, it's that. You always have to see what's going on. Could it be all 3 doshas? Yes. So for instance, SI joint issue, if it's hypermobility and there's a dryness to it, let's say, and it's kind of grinding and popping, that's probably a vata issue. We need to lubricate it and then strengthen it. If there's inflammation, there's red heat, swelling there, that's pitta that's being expressed, and we need to cool that off. If the structure has been modified, there's too much lubrication, or there's an actual structural defect, let's say you have a bone spur in there, God forbid, that's a kapha issue. And we'd have to apply the appropriate therapy for that. Right? So it gets fine-tuned.
Thank you so much. That actually makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to, at this point, a lot of times through training in Ayurveda, people get get hooked into like, oh, this equals this. This has to be this, and it's not like that. That's not real medicine. That's not real healing art. We have to realize these are just concepts. We got to figure out what is the appropriate concept and appropriate therapy for it.
I got a question.
Yeah, I'm just going to answer one thing from Rebecca. Is the problem often all three doshas?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it sometimes it is, sometimes not. It can be one dosha, it can be 2 or 3. You're gonna see all that happening. Okay. I wish that was always one dosha. That'd be so easy. In fact, when clients come to me and they have only a single dosha, I usually like have this giant smile on my face, be like, "Oh, thank you for coming in and only having one thing." It's such a relief. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Sky.
So that can be applied to like patients with fibromyalgia because it is such a widespread of symptoms and it varies from day to day, moment to moment.
Fibromyalgia is tridoshic. Yeah, fibromyalgia is definitely tridoshic. It's a pretty deep and serious disease, so it's tridoshic.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and start looking over. Well, before I go into the Vata subdoshas and the rest of them, I want to just talk about one little thing, a little bit about scope of practice. So right now, currently, we're in a program for being Ayurvedic wellness counselors. Give me a little hand raise, although I'd love to see more of your faces because 2/3 of the screen is darkened out, but it'd be useful because I'm going to be asking for hand raises for some of this stuff. So it'd be lovely. Yeah, don't be shy. Okay. And it's funner. That way I can actually feel like I'm being a teacher instead of like looking into black screens. Okay. So a question I want to ask is how many of you are planning on going on to becoming Ayurvedic practitioners? Okay, yeah, you can do little blue hand raises too, yeah. So it looks like a good portion of you, okay? So the reason I ask is because there's a difference in the scope of practice between an Ayurvedic wellness counselor and an Ayurvedic practitioner. And the subdoshas are one of the key things that, as an Ayurvedic wellness counselor, they're useful to know about, but there isn't all that much you can do with it. Whereas Ayurvedic practitioner, they're very useful to know about. There's a lot that you can do with it. And let me just kind of go over, and I'm going to keep on weaving discussions about our scope of practice throughout a lot of our classes. But this is a beginning. So as an Ayurvedic wellness counselor, where you're kind of limited about things that you're going to be working with, is going to be, you can use diet for sure. And that's great because diet foods are great medicine and they have proclivity towards different areas, thus areas like subdoshas, sites, so on, right? Lifestyle. Okay, dinacharya, basically daily regimen, and the full spectrum of lifestyle, and yoga, if you're trained in yoga, and meditation modalities too. So you can use all that, which is huge. As well as what's called 5 sense therapies. So if you're trained in aromatherapy, that works with the sense of the smell. If you're trained in body work, that's with the sense of touch, right? So you can, if you have these extra trainings, you can apply them. So 5 sense therapies, right? Music therapy for the ear, so on. Art therapy, color therapy for the eyes, right? So these are all tools that you can use, again, if you have proper training in those. And of course, any kind of adjunct modalities that you have training in, if you can see it through the lens of Ayurveda, if you can apply that, which hopefully you'll be learning quite well through these programs, then you can use that. Now, as an Ayurvedic wellness counselor, you're going to get some base training in about 20 herbs, which are more like cooking spices herbs, and some of the most basic formulas. Okay. However, as an Ayurvedic practitioner and doctors and so on, they have a very similar scope. That's when you get into really herbology and the use of that in the very various forms and start learning about panchakarma, as well as cleansing, shodhana procedures, let's say, as well as advanced modalities with Ayurveda. Okay, so when I'm going to be speaking about the subdoshas, you can already start thinking about like, and I'll be talking about like some simple remedies that you can work with. We're not going to go so much into like herbal realms at this point, but we're going to think about like diet, lifestyle, etc. kind of realms. sense therapies that can be working. Okay, so the 5 sub-doshas of Vata. Who knows the 5 sub-doshas of Vata? I'll start with questions. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Denise. Your mic's not on, but.
Yeah, sorry, I lost myself on the screen in the class. Well, Udana Vayu, Apana Vayu, Samana Vayu, Vyana Vayu, and I forget one.
Starts with a P.
Prana Vayu.
Yes, Prana Vayu, yes. Okay, so again, we have Prana, Udana, we have Vyana, we have Samana, and we have Apana Vayu. Okay. Now, the subdoshas, like we said, they relate to elements and they relate to functions, key functions of Vata dosha. Before we get into the subdoshas in detail, I want to just state that, are they different than Vata in general? No. They are Vata dosha, but they're just a concept created that kind of subdivides it into areas for therapeutic purposes. So to be clear about that, it's not like there's these 5 different energies going around in our body. They're the one energy, but the way that it behaves and gives its focus to at any given moment is what we're talking about. Okay, it's just to be clear about that, is we don't want to fall into kind of a trap of like, oh no, this is all kind of interrelated. This is doing this is doing this. No. It's one Vata that is performing in this way at this moment, or for this particular function. So the 5 Vayus, the 5 subdoshas of Vata, you've probably been introduced to those of you that practice yoga, because these are the key aspects of movement of the way that prana acts in yoga. Okay, so there's a definite overlap with the yoga understanding, yoga philosophy, as well as Ayurveda in this. So prana vayu, we'll start with that. Prana, the element, the bhuta, the element of prana is ether. Okay, it's the way that ether element relates with Vata dosha. Now, the directionality, so this is another important piece, is the direction. You want to know, because Vata is the mover of all things. So one of the utilities of knowing about these 5 subdoshas, it gives you what's called gati. You'll learn about this later. It's called gati. Gati is directionality of doshas, or the way they're moving. It's very important therapeutically, because if a dosha is moving in its improper way, it's going to cause some problems. Right? It could be a very physical thing that's moving in a wrong way, or it can be a mental thing and so on, or it's energetic thing. So prana moves downward and inward towards the navel. Okay, it's kind of like ingesting. Prana is about ingesting experience through our 5 sense organs, bringing it into ourselves. And the navel is seen as kind of the root, the source of all the energetics in our body. Ayurveda. So it kind of moves towards the center, the core. That's prana's movement. The functions of prana, or actually, let's talk about site before the function. So the primary site of prana, if you're going to work with it therapeutically, is the head. Right? So that's the key piece, the head, mouth. So up here, let's say, this general sphere up here, the cranial cavity, the head, the brain, throat, okay, because swallowing is a function of prana. Lungs, right, because they're related to inhale, that's a function of prana. And of course the navel, okay, all the way, it's kind of like from the head in a direct path down towards the navel. Right?
Sorry to interrupt, but there's a problem with your mic, I guess, because it's coming down your volume. Sometimes.
Yeah, let me see.
Clear.
Is it better? Okay. Sometimes it's just a little movement. It may have gotten knocked off by my cup or something. Okay, good. So head, cranial cavity, brain, throat, lungs, diaphragm, navel, kind of that pathway down. downward and inward. Okay, but that's the key site. But for practical purposes, the head is where you would work with pranavayu when it's out of order. So using nasya nasal medications, ear oiling, eye drops, shirodhara, all these kind of remedies work with prana. So functions. There is an Ayurvedic sutra that, well, let's see, there's, I'm not going to go into that one yet. It's a lengthy one, but let me go over some of the functions of this. So in the sutras, they speak of the functions of prana is purana. And purana means to fill the space. Okay? Because you're taking the outside and processing and filling yourself with your external experience. Okay, so that's what prana's function is. It fills the space in the cells and it governs inspiration, whether it's cellular respiration or gross respiration. Inspiration, so intake of oxygen, intake of prana, so on, intake of nutrients. And an example of this is kind of if you, after like doing yoga, after doing pranayama, if you feel like a tingle and warmth in your body, maybe certain areas of the body, that's the kind of prana moving, let's say. Some of the main functions of prana, we have maintenance of life. That's number one, right? Prana keeps you alive. You cannot live without prana. It's your life force. Flowing of intelligence. It's the regulator for homeostatic functions. Remember last class we talked how doshas are essentially homeostatic regulators, but prana is the main one in charge of that. That's the main regulator for it all. Union of cosmic prana and inner prana. Okay, so kind of keeping us connected to the greater whole, the macrocosm. Governs any kind of higher cerebral activity. Prana is in charge of that. When we're talking about like spiritual evolution, we're talking about pranic evolution. It supplies food, water, and oxygen to all cells, tissues, and organs, right? Because it governs circulation, transportation of all these things, and ingestion. Supports the functioning of the heart, right? Especially in arterial flow, the kind of outflow of the blood. It supports inhalation, swallowing, ingestion, right? So hence it's kind of seated in the throat also. And in the Yoga Sutras, one of the first sutras, Chitta Vritti Nirodha, right? The sensation of mind stuff or mind waves is yoga, right? Is union. So prana, when prana becomes still, now it doesn't leave your body, but when it becomes still and it's inhabiting you, this is the state of union. This is the state of samadhi. Okay? So these are some of the key functions of pranavayu. Now, what are some ways that we can help manage pranavayu if there's imbalances with prana?
For legs, I mean, I always like to do legs up the wall because it helps with like circulation and just getting everything going. Yeah.
Bring the blood up towards this area. Yeah. Well, any kind of vata reducing lifestyle and activity is going to help in general with pranavayu, right? And anything that kind of controls our senses, pratyahara kind of yoga, the controlling of our senses will be helpful because it'll limit the amount of input we're constantly getting. That can be very distractive for prana. We did a meditation at the beginning of class. That was kind of like a body scan, a mindfulness type of body scan meditation. This is very helpful for prana type issues because it works directly with the sense of touch, right? And also kind of with sensation on the body. So it's really, really grounding. And that the sensations are directed to our brain by our sensory neurons, which prana is in charge of. So meditations that are embodying like that are very, very helpful. Shirodhara is a very helpful technique. Like, have everybody heard of that? Pouring of the medicated oil on the third eye, forehead. Cranial sacral therapy is lovely. Right? It can be integrated in Ayurveda. It can work directly on prana with that. And then there is something that is named after prana, pranayama. Yeah, pranayama is all about regulating prana and working with all the doshas. I mean, all the sub-doshas, actually, and all the doshas too. But it goes through the vehicle of prana. Yeah.
Nadishadanam, I guess.
Absolutely. That's one of the key ones for regulating prana vayu. Absolutely. Good. Good. And in general, inhales. Anything that's inhale emphasizing of pranayams, like increasing inhale, increasing retention after inhale, that'll all help with prana. Okay, so that's prana vayu. Now next, we have udana vayu. Udana vayu is the air element portion, how the air element relates with vata. It's found in the diaphragm, in the navel, of course, and the throat. So it's similar in location in a lot of ways to prana because it's the inverse piece of prana. Its direction is upward and out, right? Exactly opposite to prana. So in Ayurveda, as opposed to yoga, and in a lot of yoga philosophy, you hear about apana and prana being respectively inhale and exhale. Right? Inhale, prana, exhale, apana. In Ayurveda, we like to talk about udana being the exhale. Right? So prana, udana. Udana being the exhale portion of respiration. Right? It governs speech or expression. It sustains memory. It helps with memory recall. It maintains color, complexion, and strength. So it kind of gives you this upliftment. It governs exhalation, and it governs the rise. It kind of controls rising up versus gravity. So any idea of upliftment, positivity, spiritual upliftment, this is udana vayu. So you can see how prana, udana are very, very key in any kind of spiritual practice. And, you can't progress very far without udana. Otherwise, you kind of lose your steam. You lose interest. Udana gives you that I don't want to say inspiration because that's linked with prana, but inspiration more on a mental, emotional level, kind of uplifts you. Right? So that a more psychological piece. But udana, again, is going to be on a more physical. It's going to deal with speech, voice, exhalation, and any kind of issues that have to deal with problems with exhalation. Okay, color, complexion of skin, things like that. Okay? CO2 coming out. So, what are some ways that we can work with this? Yeah, and I think pranayama practice. Yes, someone typed that in there. So yes, absolutely. Pranayama practice and focusing on the exhale, okay? Or doing pranayams that actually have a sound to them, like ujjayi, right? Something that expresses, that gives vocalization, right? Brahmari is also good for that too. Right? So that'll be one way that we can work with that. Now, udana vayu is also tremendously helped by like demulcent herbs like licorice, okay, and also herbs that are expectorant. So if someone has cough, right, anything you take like cough syrups often have herbs that are expectorant. And in Ayurveda, one of the panchakarmas is especially good for this is vamana. That's therapeutic vomiting, essentially with medicated substances. That's used to treat udana vayu, get the energy moving up. Okay, udana vayu. Next, I'm going to speak about vyana vayu. Okay, so vyana vayu is related to Yeah, camel pose. There's a yoga move. Sorry, that's not someone's mentioned. That's good. Vyana Vayu, water element. That's how water relates, because it's very much corresponds to the circulatory system. So the heart and really the whole body are the site of the Vyana Vayu, because it is the circulatory system. It's the movement mechanism for circulation. There is an Ayurvedic sutra about the functions. It's a word called praspandanam is the function of Vyana Vayu. Praspandanam is pulsation or throbbing. That's what the translation is. So anything that idea of that kind of pulsing and throbbing of your arteries and veins, right, of your circulatory system, that is Vyana Vayu. It imparts that, and the pulsing and throbbing of your heart. Right, that's where Vyana comes from. I like to picture Vyana as circular movement, but circular in a centrifugal way, right? Going from the center out, like a spiraling out. All right, so that's Vyana Vayu, circulation. Some of its other functions are, of course, the movement of blood, general circulation, but also transport of prana throughout the body, oxygen throughout the body, and carries thoughts, feelings, and emotions to the heart, and repressed thoughts, feelings, and emotions to the connective tissues. Okay, so very, very important here. So on a mental, emotional, psychological level, Vyana functions to both bring things like the veins, kind of like venous circulation, back to the heart, like all emotions, so that they can be processed in the heart, kind of the center of consciousness in Ayurvedic viewpoint. But also, emotions that aren't processed, they're repressed, not processed, it then circulates them to deposit in the connective tissue where they get stored. Okay, it's a brilliant view of Ayurveda. Okay, so Vyana is responsible for that too. If you can't process the emotion at that time, etc., for one reason or another, it'll then get deposited into your tissues. Right? So now, one of the techniques to work with that, of course, is meditation. Because meditation reverses that and starts pulling emotions and things that have been lodged in your tissues back into circulation, mental circulation, for the heart to process them, right? As well as many other like counseling techniques, trauma therapies, things like that. They all do that. Yeah. So, so good. So far, so good.
What about its like connection to yin yoga then? Because yin in our fascia, like our connective tissue, that's like where we store it, and yin yoga is, very known to like stir up all those emotions and really work to get out all of those things. So would this just kind of?
This is why it works. Yeah.
Okay.
So Yin Yoga is also based off of fascial research and myofascial work. Okay, that's kind of the origin of where it came up from. And basically they're applying the principles of the research that they know for holding like 2 to 3 minutes a posture that you need to hold for at least that amount of period to release the cross hooks of fascia, so it can actually get a more longer change to happen, a more permanent change. But now that we know the Ayurvedic understanding of the connective tissue holding these emotions and stuff, there's a lot more that's in. I'm trying to keep this really simple, but let's just say the emotions getting stored in there. That, yeah, totally. Okay. That's like, but it doesn't have to be in yoga. You can just apply that to anything. Meditation's doing that for a longer time. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. But that's one reason why.
Can't hear you.
It's one reason why I can explain that phenomenon. Okay. Now, what are some ways that we can work with it? So yin yoga, yeah? We can work with yin yoga. Yin yoga is a great way of doing it. How about massage? right? Any kind of body work, well done body work can help bring stuff up from the connective tissues back into general circulation. Exercise in general is going to work with Vyana Vayu and help correct that. So proper exercise, diaphoretic or warming spices that make you sweat, right? That's one way. In the techniques of Ayurveda, there's something called Hrud Basti, which is a kind of like an oil vat over the heart. Okay, that's a very good technique. Rakta Mokshana, it's one of the Panchakarmas, bloodletting, okay, or donating blood. Marma points, that's another fantastic marma massage. Ayurvedic marma points, or acupressure and so on, is extremely useful for that too. So now let's go on to Samana Vayu, yes, or Samana Vayu. So this is the element of fire interacting with Vata. Its site is the lower part of the stomach and the small intestine, navel. Okay, so that's a key therapeutic area for Pitta. And its function, or actually, sorry, its direction first, I'll do that, or movement is linear, horizontal, but I like to say it's centripetal. So going from the extremities towards the center, so concentrating towards the center. Okay. So linear and horizontal is more to do with the movement of intestines, because the intestines are kind of like that. Right? But centripetal towards the center from the extremities is a great way to look at it as energetic of it. Now, its function, the key function in Sanskrit is called viveka. And viveka is isolating, separating, splitting. So basically splitting into essential and non-essential, the equality of discrimination, viveka. Because what samana's key function is digestion, absorption, and assimilation of food. So in that process, it discriminates between what is essential for us to have and what we don't want. So that way, that gets formed into stool or urine, right? And the rest becomes nutrition for our body. It gets sent to the liver through portal hepatic circulation. Okay, so that's Samana Vayu is in charge of that discriminatory function of our digestion, absorption, and assimilation. It's also in charge of secreting the right balances of digestive enzymes and juice and gastric juices in our body or in our digestive system. It governs really all the activity of small intestines, pancreas, liver, spleen, gallbladder, all organs related to digestion and blood flow like that. And maintains the peristalsis in our system. So the muscle movement of our GI tract, peristalsis, is governed by Samana Vayu. Okay? And especially when it's in small intestines, that area in particular. Right? So those are some of the key functions of the Samana Vayu. Now, what are some ways that we can work with it? It's a little tricky. It's probably not the usual sphere of things, but I want to see if anybody has some ideas.
Diet and maybe fasting?
Yeah, for sure. Fasting. Yeah. Fasting, the reason I'm shaking my head and saying, yeah, it's a great thing is because fasting kind of creates an environment of contraction. And that's the energetic of it, is from periphery to the center. Right? It kind of contracts, it refines, it brings to a point our digestive capacity. Right? First, it burns off like Ama, and then it concentrates the Agni. Yeah. So here's
lymphatic massage.
What's that?
Lymphatic massage. Lymphatic drainage.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I haven't thought of that one in there, but yeah, absolutely. I think that can happen.
like twists in yoga so that you can help also just move that general area?
Sure, sure, yeah, absolutely. Twists will help. In fact, the most basic twist in yoga is called Jatara Paravritti, the twisting of the Agni. And it's exactly for stimulating Samanavayu. Yes. Perfect. Good, good. These are great suggestions. Good. So let me add a couple more to that. Nabi Basti. Nabi Basti is like a little tank of oil that you use and put on the belly. That's an Ayurvedic treatment. Any kind of like aromatically warm herbs like cardamom, cumin, okay, ginger, things like that are very, very helpful. Massage, abdominal massage, heat packs like castor oil packs and so on placed on the abdomen. These are all useful treatments. Okay, good. So Samana Vayu leaves us with the last Vayu, which is Apana Vayu. Apana is the interaction of the earth element with Vata. Now, the movement of this is downward and out. Okay, prana is downward and into the body. Apana is downward and out of the body. So it's elimination. Right? The site of apana is essentially the pelvic cavity and the colon. Okay, this is a very key site for vata, one of the central areas for it, the essential therapeutic area, I should say. And the functioning, in Sanskrit they call it dharana. So it's to hold the flow, kind of give it a container. So it's apana is both about retention and elimination of urine, feces, semen, and the fetus. All right. So when you're thinking about urine, it's your ability to retain the urine, stop it, or let it flow. Okay, so if there's any issues with that, it's upon an issue. Semen, same for males, right? Ability to retain or allow it to flow. And feces, right? So any problems with going to the bathroom, constipation, diarrhea, things like that, apana issues. As well, and then fetus, as far as babies, keeping the baby in and then actually giving birth to the baby is apana vayu, right? It's all in control of that. It governs any kind of the functions of the pelvic girdle, and often that is reproductive organs are associated with that. And it promotes, in the large intestine, it promotes the absorption of water and minerals in the colon. And overall gives a tone to the body because of the electrolyte balance, right? And fluids in the body, which give tone, a key element of giving tone to the body. Okay? So those are some of the key aspects of apana vayu. So we've covered the 5 subdoshas kind of in a lot of detail. I'm going to, in 1 minute, I'll give another little way of how to manage that in a second. But we've covered these 5 subdoshas. And after I talk about the mantra, I just want to open up to any questions. These are the most lengthy that we're going to talk about. And they're also very important because almost every treatment is going to take into account how vata is moving the other doshas or causing directions of imbalance. So knowing these 5 subdoshas of vata is very, very key. Of all the subdoshas out there, these are very important. So apana, you can treat it with laxatives, right? You can treat it with basti, that's in panchakarma, way of medicated enemas. That's one way to work with that area because it very directly works with that site. And herbs that kind of correct the flow of vata, like haritaki and dashmula, are some classical Ayurvedic herbs that are good for vata. Okay, so those are some of the ways. Any kind of grounding, meditation, grounding yoga poses, right? Pelvic openers, hip openers, things like that are all going to be helpful for apana vayu. Standing poses too. Okay, so just to open up for question. Oh, Nali, yes. Nali would be very helpful for samana too. Samana vayu, that would help. I heard that vatas are not supposed to fast. No, they can fast, just a little less than other constitutions. Okay, it has to be, and usually like a monodiet would be better than a complete fast. Excellent. So I'm just responding to some of the chat. And now, any other questions before we move on to subdoshas of Pitta and Kapha? I just want to make sure everyone's clear, or if you have any kind of last questions for this. I'm very aware that this is also a big information heavy class too. It's one of the few ones that we're going to be kind of going over with lots of lists and details like this, but this one we kind of have to do that. Good, okay, so it looks like everyone's okay. The questions. So let's now go ahead and go into the subdoshas of Pitta. Let me do this in a different way, just to kind of break things up. I'll go ahead and list I'll actually ask you about the subdoshas of Pitta, and then I'll talk about what elements are related, and then we'll kind of get back to them. So let me just check on the chat for y'all. Yeah. Yes, I definitely agree that go over this many times, but don't worry, you have a long time to master this, and it won't be extremely relevant until much later on in your practice time. Okay, but I do want you to know that it exists and start getting a handle on it, but give yourself a long time to learn about subdoshas. It's not like immediately important material. Okay. So what are the 5 types of subdoshas for Pitta?
Pachaka, Ranjaka, Saraka. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly.
That's fine.
Alochaka and Bradachaka.
Yeah, Brajaka, yeah.
Brachaka.
So Pachaka, Ranjaka, Sadaka, Alochaka, and Brajaka. So let's first talk about them elementally. So Pachaka is related to fire. And Pachaka is the one that's related to our digestive capacity. All right. And its friend in the Vata subdoshas is Samanavayu. Right. Ranjaka is related to water. And it is the pitta that lives in the liver. Okay. And kind of governs digestion from a liver perspective, let's say. Sadaka lives in the brain, and it's related to kind of prana. It's in the head region, and it's related to ether element. So it shares that element. Alochaka is in the eyes. It's a pitta that lives in the eyes and gives us visual perception. That's related to the air element. Okay. And then Brajaka is the skin. It's the pitta that's in your skin. It gives you like temperature, right, warmth. And I'll go through a lot of other qualities. And this is related to the earth element. Okay, how the earth element works with pitta. All right. Let me just check the chat while we're looking at that. Looks like we're accumulating a lot of chat. Yeah, good. Yeah, cooks the food, right. So let's go back to Pachaka. I'll start with that. These Pachaka and Ranjaka, I would say, are on a physical level the 2 very most important to kind of understand of Pitta subdoshas, because they're most related to the main site of Pitta and with digestion and transformation on a nutrient level. Pachaka, like I said, it's fire element, and it primary site is going to be stomach, the lower portion of stomach, and the small intestine. All right, so kind of the key sites of Pitta. What it means is to digest, right, literally, and digestion, absorption, and assimilation are its key functions for nutrients in the digestive system. It's of those kind of larger topics of digestion, absorption, assimilation, and all that, what it really focuses on is the initial food breakdown. Pachaka is that when food gets in the stomach and the stomach's kind of churning and breaking down, the initial enzymatic, let's say, attack of the food particles starts breaking things down. That's really what we're talking about with Pachaka. It's kind of the most commonly aggravated aspect of Pitta and commonly treated kind of piece of Pitta. Okay, it's the one that therapeutically you're going to be working with the most. It's the seat of our Jatara Agni. When you think of Jatara Agni, the closest piece is Pachaka Pitta that you're thinking of. Okay, most best describes Jatara Agni, our main Agni of digestion. Let's see if there's a little bit more pieces. Let me go into a little bit about treatment for this. So any herbs or remedies that work with Agni, refinement, stimulation, balancing are essentially going to be aimed at Pachaka Pitta. Especially like bitter and cooling herbs will be often helpful. Purgatives. Now, pranayama and yoga, there's much that you can do, and we've already talked a little bit about that. Anything that's going to work with samana vayu essentially is going to really, really help with Pachaka Pitta also. So twists and will be very helpful. Nali will be very helpful. Okay. As far as pranayams go, Shitali, Shitkari pranayam, cooling pranayams like that. Chandra Bedana, inhaling through the left, exhaling through the right, just that. These are all helpful pieces of that. The next Pitta subdosha is Ranjaka Pitta. So Ranjaka is the water element, like I mentioned, and Ranjaka lives in the liver as well as the spleen. And it's essentially like the hemoglobin in your blood. Okay, so you see how the subdosas are kind of related to the main sites of Pitta too. So it's in the blood, it's in the kind of lower aspect of the stomach and the GI factor, as well as the liver and spleen. Okay, Ranjaka is highly active in there. Ranjaka means to color. That's literally what it translates into. Because it gives color to your blood and all internal organs. And really, it's kind of behind your coloration of your skin and so on. Right? And when I mean that not on like let's say racial coloration, but within the spectrum of your ancestral background. You know, like the redness or kind of the blood infusion or rosacea, things like that. That's what I'm speaking about there. It also kind of gives color to your eyes. So, and a disease of Ranjaka Pitta is hepatitis, for instance, in which you get yellowed eyes or jaundice. It produces bile for the gallbladder, and bile helps to break down fats in the digestion. Ranjaka is kind of behind liver enzymes and gastrointrinsic factor, which is used for utilizing B12, vitamin B12, for absorption and digestion. And Ranjaka Pitta also has a function of metabolizing emotions. Okay, and modern science now has done a lot of studies. There's this great book that came out quite a long time ago, in the 80s now, from research in the 80s, called Molecules of Emotion. Okay. And it's fantastic, and it shows like the early research of the actual chemistry of emotions, of what's called neuropeptides. Okay? These things really exist. They've tracked them, and believe it or not, they're mostly created around our abdomen and navel. That's where 90% of our neuropeptides and source of our emotions are linked. Okay, not our brain, but in our abdomen. Right? Hence gut feelings, that phrase. Right? It's been around for a long time, and now they've proven it. And the book's name, just someone's asking here, is Molecules of Emotion. I forget the author's name, but she was in the movie What the Bleep that came out a long time ago. Yeah, what to believe do we know? She was she was actual scientific research for National Institute of Health in the USA. But Ranjaka Pitta is behind that to kind of like neuropeptide production and metabolization of emotions. Right? And hence why the liver is so linked to so many emotions, various systems. Liver herbs, any other kind of herbs that have affinity with the liver will help with this, like turmeric, for instance. Turmeric is one of the popular things out there. It's used for that. Barberry, a lot of other things. For Rachana, the Panchakarma remedy will be very, very helpful for Ranjaka Pitta. Okay. Any kind of herbs or castor oil packs even put on the liver, that's all helpful. I'm just going to check the chat. Yeah, Candace Pert. Good. So we got that. That's the name of the author of the book. Excellent. So next, let's move on to Sadaka Pitta. Sadaka Pitta, this one's lovely. This morning I was teaching a class that was very focused on Sadaka Pitta. It's the ether element relating with Pitta dosha. And Sadaka Pitta literally means to meditate, to think, okay? Or to like practice, because sadhana, sadak, right? Sadak is one who practices or does spiritual practice, right? It's kind of related to the word tapas in yoga. So, now, its primary site is in the brain, the gray matter, and also in the heart. Because in yoga and a lot of other different philosophies, spiritual philosophies of the East, the heart is really seen as the center of consciousness. So Sadaka Pitta is that relator between the mind and the heart. So its function is to be essentially the seat of consciousness, the holder of the consciousness. It's the creator of that I am consciousness, that ahamkara. Okay, so Sadaka Pitta is let's say, the energetic manifestation in Pitta form, let's say for us, of that concept of ahamkara that we spoke about last class. It chooses the memory from the DNA. Okay, and this is kind of fun wording. I remember having Dr. Ladd speak about this. But the selective memory, or what you pull from your DNA, is an aspect of buddhi in Ayurveda, right? Kind of like your cosmic intelligence and your lifestyle and how you live it and so on. Sadaka Pitta is responsible for that. Sadaka Pitta transforms the senses, your sensory input, which is controlled by prana. It transforms your senses and the sensory input into knowledge, into pure knowledge, understanding. It's what makes sense of all the information you're getting in from the outer environment. And it is responsible for the digestion of feelings and emotions and really any of the sensory input. So thought, feeling, and emotion into right understanding, into proper intelligence. So on a mental level, let's say, Sadaka Pitta is your digestive system. Okay? It digests the contents of the mind, which are thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And it transforms those into your consciousness, into pure intelligence and understanding. Okay? We'll revisit this in other modules and so on. I was just today, it's so fun. I taught 2 hours just about this. So, this aspect is very, very important piece of Sadaka Pitta. Okay? And like I said, it kind of relates to prana. Prana, as far as the Vata subdosha goes. When we get to Kapha, there's going to have another relationship, and that's going to be Tarpaka Kapha, because that's memory. Okay, Prana, Sadaka, and Tarpaka are the mental subdoshas, you should say. Mental, kind of emotional subdoshas. Next for Pitta is Alachaka Pitta. Alachaka Pitta is air element. It's eyes, okay? and it's kind of sense organ of seeing, let's say. And it literally means alachaka means to see. Now, the functions of alachaka is to maintain the iris color, visual perception, as well as emotions and tears, expression of emotions and tears in the eyes. And I realized I didn't talk about kind of ways of managing sadhaka, and I'll do that together with alachaka now. So sadhaka is really best managed through meditation, spiritual practice. Right? That's a key piece. Shirodhara is very helpful. That's an Ayurvedic modality. And then there's a whole scope of herbs and remedies called medya rasayans, or medya herbs, which are mind herbs. The most popular being Brahmi. Right? Some of you have probably heard of the herb Brahmi, which is actually Bacopa monnieri. Okay? It's one of the best herbs for the mind, the rejuvenator, the rasayan for the mind. All right, so hrudbasti, I've mentioned that before, kind of that tank of oil that's placed on the heart is also very useful, because again, that's a site, that's an area where a sadhaka lives. I can help the process and kind of integrate emotions. For alachaka, some management techniques, I'll leave this to you. There's probably things you're familiar with, that you probably do relatively often. So what do you think would be some good management techniques for alachaka, pitta, and the eye?
Pratyahara, like sensory things, like different meditations that have to do with sensory, just getting like maybe a chocolate meditation or something like that. You know what I mean? Like just something to like specifically focus on one sensory organ.
Well, alachaka will focus on the eyes though, right? For seeing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking about the other one. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
My mistake.
Yeah. Denise. Yeah.
Would you say sun gazing would be a good one?
Yeah, or candle gazing, right? Yeah, tratak. Right?
That's what I was going to say. Right?
Yeah, sure. That's perfect. That's a great remedy for alachaka pitta. And also what was called netra too, right? Netra basti or so, netra, eye washes. Okay, like washing your eyes with rose water, for instance. Very, very helpful. All right, good. Okay, lastly, we have brajaka pitta. So brajaka pitta is the earth element relating to pitta. And what it literally means is baking or roasting site. It's interesting that they chose that, so brajaka. But what it's talking about here, the primary site is the skin. It's the pitta that's related to the skin. So funny, baking or roasting site. Well, in India, that makes sense, because you don't walk around India without getting some tan or another very quickly. So maintenance of skin color, also to temperature of the skin, the sense of touch, pain, texture, right? So the sensory touch, discrimination of the sensory touch. Okay, because we know that Vata is responsible with sense of touch, but that's more for the perception of it. But then the Pitta is the discrimination. Is it painful? Is it pleasant? Is it, so on. So it's kind of discriminates what sort of sensation, not just is there a sensation. Is there a sensation as Vata? What sort is Pitta? Okay, and remembering the sensation, responding to it would be more of a Kapha thing. So the sense of touch, pain, texture, and temperature. Okay, that's all part of Brajaka. If there's issues with that, it's a Brajaka issue. Absorption of oils, okay, from like massage, let's say, and also of light, right? Vitamin D. Okay? Skin and emotions and fascia. Okay, so again, skin is related with your fascia. It's a surface kind of fascia, let's say. So there's an emotional aspect to it there too. See, but we want to talk about other things. The skin is a digestive organ. That's very, very important. It's a route of its administration for medicines too. So anything you put in oil you put on your skin is absorbed and eaten by you. And that bypasses the liver too. So very important. So key ways of treating Brajaka, abhyanga, massage, self-massage, applying medicated oils, marma massage, right? Acupressure, marma, right? Acupuncture works on Brajaka Pitta too. And then, of course, sweet, bitter herbs, astringent herbs are all have a proclivity for this too. And there are certain herbs that are more have a proclivity with skin, like aloe vera. Brahmi actually does too. Okay, so those are the Pitta subdoshas. Any questions on those or clarification? And then otherwise we can go on to the last of the Kapha subdoshas. All good. You're hanging in there. It's a dense class. I know. Okay. The Kapha subdoshas now. So who can name the 5 Kapha subdoshas? They have fun names. Kledaka, Avalambaka, okay. Bodaka, some Maureen, good. Tarpaka, yeah. And one of my favorites, Shleshaka, yay, excellent. Fantastic. So I'll go through the elements first, and then we'll go through it admittedly. So Kledaka, the fire element. This is the relative Pata. This is the fire element of the Pitta. Of the Kapha dosha. And this relates again to digestion, stomach, and so on. And then we have Avalambaka, the air element, which relates to the lungs. Avalambaka. Then we have Bodaka, which is water element, and this relates to our mouth and taste. And then we have Tarpaka Kapha, the ether element, relating to the brain, and thus Sadaka Pitta Prana Vayu. And we have lastly earth element, which is Shleshaka, which relates to the joints. Okay? So that's going to have relationship, any kind of joint issues are often some sort of vitiation of Shleshaka Kapha by the various doshas. So starting with Kledaka, we have again the fire element. Kledaka, it literally means, and its main function is really kind of liquefaction, concoction. Okay, Kledaka is kind of that's the definition of it literally. It lives in the stomach, the upper curvature, the lesser upper curvature of the stomach. And what it really is the lining of the intestinal tract. The mucus lining, mucosal lining of your intestinal tract is Kledaka Kapha. In the stomach, it is also the lymphatics and also the different kinds of like gastrointestinal secretions that are more protective. Because we have some like the hydrochloric acid, which is dissolving, and the Kledaka Kapha is the stomach secretions and mucus lining, which protects the stomach and the intestines from this acid. Right? In our digestion, we have to have a balance of things that are sharp and penetrating and things that are dull and moistening to create a perfect balance. And if one goes off, or one is less or reduced or too high, then it's going to cause an imbalance. It can cause ulcers or just extreme indigestion, etc. on the other spectrum. So the mucin from the mucin secretions from the mucus lining, from that greater curvature of the stomach, and it really also any of the secretions in our esophagus, and it starts in our mouth too. So this liquefies and breaks down the food. Okay, kind of emulsifies it, you could say. That's going into your stomach. And why is it doing it? So that the molecules of pitta, that pachaka pitta, those enzymes and so on, secretions can get into as much surface area. And it yields the sweet taste into the blood. It kind of nourishes your rasa, your plasma, and provides energy right after consuming food. So that's some of the functions of clay daca. Next, or actually before I go on, some ways to manage it. If it's deficient, then you have to use like demulcer herbs or substances that help build it up, like herbs like shatavari or licorice. Licorice is a very popular herb, or slippery elm bark, things like that, to kind of help build up those mucus secretions. Or in the lungs, okay, clay daca can actually move to the lungs too. And this is for expectorants and stuff like that that are useful there. Now, Avalambaka is the next, and that's the kapha that is related to the lungs. It's air, and it means support. Right? So and it's also named as like the great protector, Avalambaka kapha. It is kind of the key kapha in our body that protects and nourishes. And since it's in the lungs, it's able to distribute through the body very easily, along with our circulation and prana, let's say. So primary seat, chest, lungs, mucosal lining of the lungs, the pleural cavity, the heart, and the lining of the heart, the secretion, lubrication of our heart, respiratory tract, as well as the spine. Some of the functions. One is it's a key holder of emotions, because there's a tremendous link between our lungs and breathing and emotions. In the lungs, it's seen as that film that coats the alveoli, the little kind of little sacs that transfer oxygen. So it kind of lubricates those for movement and also good transference of oxygen for gaseous exchange and for helping hemoglobin in the blood. It also supports all the rest of the kapha. The reason why it's called the great protector is it supports all the rest of the kapha in the body. It's kind of like the primary kapha system, the home base of all kapha, let's say. Yeah, I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole, but right now that's good to know. So it's like the primary supporter of all the other kapha, and nourishes it. And some of the ways that you can work with this is, first of all, the amount of humidity in the air that you're breathing is really key. Right? If you live in really dry climate, then it's useful to have like a humidifier, or like be around water so that the lungs can get that, nourish that Avalambaka kapha. Right? And vice versa, if there's too much humidity or moisture in your environment, then the opposite, drying herbs or using like drying saunas to balance that. Vaman, the Panchakarma remedy, is really useful. Any kind of anti-kapha herbs generally help with that too. Okay, those are ways of treating it. Breathing exercises, pranayam, kapalabhati, can work very well for this. Next, bodhaka kapha. Bodhaka kapha is the water element. And what this literally means is awakening and informing. And it's related to the tongue and the oral cavity. Essentially, bodhaka kapha is behind our sense of taste. Right? So issues with taste. And without water, without moisture, we can't taste anything. It's a good experiment to try. If you can get your tongue absolutely dry, you can't taste anything. You need actual water to taste it. So this is that nourishing element that allows our tongue to experience the sensation of taste. So salivatory secretions that help kind of keep the function of our vocal cords, our uvula, the larynx, pharynx, and esophagus, keep that moisture properly for swallowing and ingestion. This is an important part of it. And saliva actually has enzymes to start breaking down carbohydrates in food. Taste perception, so your ability to taste things. Bodhaka kapha. If someone has an issue with taste, it's a bodhaka kapha issue. Helps the digestion of starches, like I mentioned, and begins our metabolic process of food. It also nourishes the clay daca and stimulates avalambaka, right? Due to what we're ingesting or we're breathing in. Kind of helps alert them to the proper proportions of clay daca or moisture in the lungs that needs to be generated. And then we have, well, ways of working with Bodhaka Kapha. Luckily, since the oral cavity is a site that we can administer things like herbs and medicines to, it's pretty easy to treat things. So one way is kavala, or oil pulling, or swishing, gargling with herbs or oils. That's a very helpful way to treat this if there's imbalances. Gargling with haritaki in the fall is a good way. Triphala tea, you can even gargle with that to help with this. Bitter and astringent herbs are often helpful. Those are the same kind of taste that you would use in toothpastes, for instance. Bitters and astringents. Okay. Next is Tarpaka Kapha, ether element, and this relates to our brain and our mind, white matter. Right? And it means to nourish. So Tarpaka, to nourish. So not only the white matter of the brain, but the myelin sheath, the cerebral spinal fluid, your sinuses, nasal cavities, vitreous humor behind the eyes is part of Tarpaka Kapha, internal ear. Okay, so any issues in those levels can be part of Tarpaka Kapha too. Some of the functions. It provides a database for your memory. Right? It's your hard drive, essentially. Subconscious thinking occurs here. Insulation for nerves like the myelin sheath, Tarpaka Kapha. It records and retains knowledge and experience. And it is the liquid component to neurotransmitters, the way that nerves communicate information. Okay? So Tarpaka Kapha is all of these things. Tarpaka Kapha also lubricates the sinuses, since it is part of that aspect. Nourishment that is provided by our senses. Remember, our senses provide food for our mind. So the Tarpaka Kapha is part of that, kind of that nourishment aspect of the sensory perception. It allows light to be transmitted from the pupil to the retina with the vitreous humor of the eye. So as an eye function, it has that. Yeah, so those are the key functions. There's a little more of a list on there. Some interesting things like in samadhi, it's turned into ojas. Or in deep meditation, Tarpaka transforms into ojas. That's a key mechanism there. Some of the ways that we work with Tarpaka Kapha is really all about nourishment. If we deeply nourish ourselves with foods or herbs, like ashwagandha, for instance, rami, any of the medya herbs, the ones that help with the mind, through rest, through relaxation, through restorative yoga, through restorative types of meditation, spiritual practice, this is all helpful for Tarpaka Kapha. Nasya, nasal medications, nose drops are a key way of working with Tarpaka Kapha. And lastly, we come to Shleshaka. Okay, Shleshaka Kapha, the earth element relating with Kapha. Shleshaka literally means freedom. And it is found in the joints. And what it corresponds to really is in our ball and socket joints of our body, right? The most mobile joints of our body, and really all our joints, are encased with synovial fluid, or a synovial fluid kind of sac. It would contain synovial fluid. So as a Western equivalent for a Shleshaka, synovial fluid is a pretty good one. It's the lubricating mechanism for our joints so that it can move with freedom. And the functions, of course, are supporting and nourishing and lubricating the joints. It also, by doing that, nourishes your bones and your periosteum, bone casing. It helps communication between cells as a part of intercellular fluid. So that's another aspect. Despite the joints, it's also at the junctures of cells. in between cells, so the intercellular space, that's where Schlesaka kapha is. And it provides nourishment and helps with communication between it's like a medium, like the nerves are, for communication between the cells. And some of the remedies, the ways that we can work with this is gentle exercise, keeping aerobic limit exercise, so keeping under a certain level. Joint freeing series like Pavan Muktasana series with yoga. So very simple with Qigong, Tai Chi is very useful. So any kind of like slow moving yoga, slow moving exercise, slow moving training of the body is excellent. Warm-ups before physical activity all help with this. That's kind of the point, is to stimulate the synovial fluids. Abhyanga, especially around joints, is very, very useful. Massage, Abhyanga. So we've done it. We've covered the material. So, and we reached kind of the capacity, yes. I promise you very few of any kind of classes like this. This is just a big doozy to fit it in. And there's no hurry to learn this super quick, okay? Just start getting familiar with the names and the sites and functions of the doshas, okay? And you'll start noticing how the subdoshas really do kind of give you insight of like applying a function to a site. Start thinking about that way and you'll start getting it. Again, these are going to be a little bit more practical on a much more advanced level, even more towards Ayurvedic practitioner. Okay, but it's important for you to know about this. And I would also prioritize really learning the 5 subdoshas of Vata. Okay, so that's to do with the movements of things in your body, and as well as disease processes and so on. So thank you, everyone. Like I said, the further classes are much more mellow. We have a lot more discussion and learning about more focused points. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. Raksha, do you have a question before we leave? Yeah.
I just have a very simple and perhaps silly question, but I'm just trying to figure out the logic behind how the sub-doshas are listed in each of the dosha categories. Is there any kind of relationship to the order of diseases or the governing elements? I mean, what is the importance of listing each of them in the orders that we have?
I wouldn't put any importance. I don't think that there was any kind of correlation importance. I've thought about the same thing too, and I'm like, well, okay, are they listing them by the elements? You can list them by the elements, but it doesn't exactly correspond, because some of them have different elements but have a functional integrity with each other. Okay, like for instance, let me see. Let's see. Well, there is, like for instance, Samana, Pachak, and Kledak all have fire, but they're the only ones that share that, because Prana, Tarpak, and Sadak, they have different elements. Right? Well, no, they have the same element too. Sorry, Prana, Sadak, and Tarpak, as well as Pachak, they share the same elements, but the others, no. There's no like other logical correlation like that. Those are only 2 I can make a direct correspondence by elements and their functionalities. The rest of it's more goes off to the different subsites a little bit more clearly and different functions. But those 2 are kind of like across. They make sense and they have a functional relationship. Okay, because they are of digestion absorption relation and because of their mind relationship. Okay, the rest is now more just different aspects of the body. Okay.
And also the way they are listed in a particular dosha, right? Does it have an importance as to the site of disorders? Like, for example, in the Kapha one, the first one listed is Kledaka. Is that the most common one that is experienced, and that's why it's listed first?
I would say, since it's not consistent with other ones, not necessarily, but Claydoca is a root of kapha disorders, but I could say that about Avalambaca too. Okay, so I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't try to like say that it's the prominence of disorders, because everyone, you know, due to one's proclivity or what's called kavaigunya, that aspect you'll learn about down there in a little way, but defective areas in our bodies due to genetics, etc. We're all going to have different spaces that have a proclivity. Yeah, I think what you're asking me will be answered very well in module 4, when we talk about Samprapti, disease pathogenesis. Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Namaste.
Okay. Namaste. Thank you, everybody. Take care.